this is Lou Antonio. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Here we come, walking down the street. We get the funniest looks from everyone we meet.
Ed Robertson, along with Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen, welcome you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television, and is happy to welcome back our friend Chuck Harter. Chuck's books on film and television include Mr.Novak, an acclaimed television series, which is available through our friends at Bear Manor Media. Chuck is also a musician and pop culture consultant. His other books include Superboy and Super Pup, The Lost Videos, Johnny Ray, 1952, The Year of the Atomic Ray, and Little Elf, a celebration of Harry Langdon, which Chuck co-authored with Michael J. Hayes. Chuck wrote the acclaimed television documentary, Hey, Hey, We're the Monkees, which aired on the Disney Channel some years back. He also has performed in venues throughout Los Angeles and other parts of the country. For a time, Chuck was a member of the Missing Links, a Monkees tribute band. So, Chuck is amazed about that himself. But we're going to spend the next hour or so talking about the Monkees, because Chuck not only wrote the documentary that aired on the Disney Channel. Chuck spent, I don't know, about a year of his life. I mean, he pretty much talked to everybody who is somebody in the world of the Monkees phenomenon, including Mike, Peter, Mickey, and David. And he is the most knowledgeable Monkees guy ever. And we're happy to have him on our show. Chuck, welcome back.
Thank you, Ed. It's nice to be here and monkey around.
So, there are many ways to start this conversation, but before you came over, I was telling Tony and Donna, you can never talk about the Monkees as a thing. They always come up into two entities. There's the show and there's the band. Even though they both have a symbiotic relationship, you always have this, it's the show and the band. But what's interesting, and I didn't realize this, is if you go to any bookstore or you go to Amazon and look up and find books on the Monkees, they're always in the music section, not the TV section.
That's right.
That's significant.
Yeah, I think so. And really the Monkees were two different things. They were a television show, a sitcom with comic actors performing in the medium of television. They were also a band who recorded records and toured. And I'll say this, it's not unfortunately popular these days, but I think the Monkees' main contribution to pop culture is not the records or their pop stardom, but the television series. And a few guys, and we'll talk about them later, who are the prime movers in keeping the Monkees' legacy going or established or whatever, their Monkees is first the musicians and the performing artists, then the TV show. And I think that's unfortunate. I mean, it's odd. Of all the books on the Monkees, there's not been one on the television show. It's always part of their big pop phenomena or the music or the records. Oh, yeah, and here's the TV show, and here's Head, the movie they did, and so forth. But the TV show is great. It was innovative. It's one of the best shows of the 60s. It won an Emmy. And it's really remarkable when you can see them now. And it just came out on Blu-ray a couple years ago, and a whole new audience, sold well. Kids are getting into it, and the appeal of their TV show is everlasting.
I think you look at the Monkees, and you can see their influence on music videos, MTV, stuff like that as well. So I would have to agree that the TV show was very groundbreaking and innovative and all of that. But why do you think that the show does not get the props that it deserves for its contribution to television but to television, music television?
Well, I think it does get the props, as you say, but again, and I might as well say it now, two guys are really responsible for resurrecting the Monkees' reputation. And the first one in the early 70s was Harold Bronson, who was one of the co-founders of Rhino Records, and he began writing articles that their music was valid, that the pop records were as good as any other pop records in the 60s. He then formed Rhino Records, and in the 80s reissued all of the CDs, well, albums in those days, but then the CDs, and really promoted the best Monkees recordings are as good as the Turtles or the Beach Boys or the other 60s pop groups. Then in the 90s, another guy came along, Andrew Sandoval, and his Monkees, again, are number one, the musicians. And he started doing all these great CD reissues, and he, in fact, manages Mike and Mickey now going out. He's still heavily involved with them as performing artist. So the resurrected legacy is kind of Monkees really were good pop star record people. Oh, yeah, and they had a funny show, too. And I think that's a shame.
Should it be the other way around? Or should
it should be both,
yeah,
because that's part of it. I mean, in the documentary, Nesmith says, what was it, a recording act? Was it a TV show? It was neither and a little of both. And he's right.
Could you have had one without the other?
No, I don't think so. I think a great thing about the Monkees is that since the Partridge Family or other type TV shows with musicians have never been as good, haven't really had the props for recordings. I mean, the Partridge Family made a couple of good singles, or actually it was David Cassidy and People or whatever. The only thing close to the Monkees that ever really happened on the same level was Spinal Tap, where you had a movie with comic actors playing musicians who recorded and toured. They did the whole thing. But no, if the Monkees had not made the records, I don't think the sitcom would have gone. And on the other hand, the sitcom helped propel the records into being big, or made them big pop stars. It was both.
And for me personally, and I think for a lot of people who grew up watching, when it was on NBC and then later on, Saturday mornings, there are certain songs that when you hear them, you cannot help but think of the show, or particularly the romp that they accompanied.
Right.
And for me, one of my favorite Monkee songs still to this day is Girl I Knew Somewhere. And whenever I hear that, I always think of the scene between Davy and Theo Marcuse in the episode Royal Flush, where the climactic scene is the duel. And at least in the version that was reran when the show went into syndication, they play Girl I Knew Somewhere. So I always associate that song with that scene. It's one of my favorite scenes of the show and one of the best episodes.
Well, I think and I'm sure a lot of others too, when you hear Daydream Believer, you can't help but visualize the guys clowning around.
Yeah.
Because you could tell that they're not actually...
And that psychedelic set.
That psychedelic set that... Davy's doing some sort of early version of moonwalking into the...
Yeah. And Davy's wearing the George Harrison shirt, So.
Yeah, and Mickey is trying to play the tambourine and missing, and you can tell that they're just really goofing around.
Yeah.
But you can't listen to that song without having that particular image, and it's a beautiful song. And I think it stands the test of time. But, you do get those visuals when you go there. But kind of going in that because, I guess you're right that as the 80s and 90s progressed, there was more of a defensive, no, they're legit. They're a real band. They're, that seemed to be... Or somebody trying to say the opposite.
Well, no, that's very true. And two things on that. Nesmith, again, of all people, who I think really understood or understands the least of what the Monkees is, and he's admitted it, he said, and he was in a cynical mood, which he can be at some point, he said, most of the Monkees, there's some great records, but most of it is just average recordings. But when they're matched up with the visuals from the TV show, they become electric.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, you're a little overstating the case, but yes, that's true. Yeah. And the Monkees have had several comebacks, but the greatest one was in '86 when MTV ran episodes for 48 hours or whatever it was in the era of music videos. Wham! Instant new audience, instant legitimacy. The records became reissued. Oh my God, look how fun they are. They reunited and did 300 cities. And
they tried to do the new Monkees.
Well, that was... Less said,
yes, we will not bring that up.
No, but in the interest of full disclosure, that
that was a cynical attempt that bombed rather quickly. But that's the thing. And in the early '70s, it was either James Taylor singer-songwriters or Deep Purple hard rock, or the Monkees were disposable pop stars whose time had ended. The new idol was Bobby Sherman. Davy Jones is history. They're all history. Nesmith, a little bit. He's doing some good country rock, but he couldn't make it go because he's just a monkey. And then all of a sudden, with Harold Bronson pushing it in the late 70s, wait a minute, and the shows kept being rerun. And then in the 80s, it exploded, and it's been going ever since.
Chuck Harter is with us, along with Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen, as we devote this hour to the history of the Monkees and their impact on music and television. Chuck wrote the acclaimed documentary, Hey, Hey, We're the Monkees, which originally aired on the Disney Channel. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but when you talk about the key role that Bronson and Sandoval played in resurrecting, creating this renaissance, and really making possible the last 30 years of the Monkees' history and keeping them part of the culture, it brings up a point that you said to me off mic. One of the reasons why the group ended as quickly as it did is because once they parted ways, or let's just say once they forced out Kirshner, they had no strong management to guide them. And that led, we'll get into that a little bit later, but ironically, it was the two forces at Rhino that basically became their management, or at least the keeper of the flame, and made everything possible.
Yeah, that's very true. And the Monkees, again, it's a fascinating story because you had four guys who had almost nothing in common. Nesmith said it's like a sports team with a great baseball player, a great basketball player, a great bowler, and a great tennis player. Boom. And they took these four guys, and within 6 months, they were as big or bigger than the Beatles. They were thrown right into the hurricane, rah! And it was insanity. It was just 24/7 insanity. So in cases without a manager, each guy had his sycophants telling me, you're the one, you don't need them, you're the star. And I think they simply just burned out in a couple of years. They did. Peter said it probably took 5 years off our lives, that 3 or 4 years, because it was so intense.
Was that fandom planned, or was that a surprise that they got so big so fast?
Absolutely a surprise. And the Monkees, prior to the Monkees, rock music and TV at best had been maybe the Ozzie and Harriet show, where at the end Ricky Nelson would sing a 3-minute tune and became an Elvis, more or less. But it wasn't the 60s. That's the 50s into the 60s. It's now the mid-60s. The medium is the message, Marshall McLuhan, all that sort of thing. And it just... and so all of a sudden... So the Monkees, this is a fallacy that I think the naive Monkee fans think, is they were just four fun-loving guys who lived in the house and loved each other, and that's not true. They were almost like they were in a combat unit in Vietnam. They were in the Army, they worked together, they were a team, and then when it started fumbling, they all went their separate ways, and that's what's odd about it. So they shared the experience, and they still do, at least now 2 of them. But that was the thing. It unbelievable pressures. Jones would tell me he said, I didn't sleep for days, or just I couldn't go anywhere without 1,000 girls trying to rip my clothes off, or just, Plus, they're getting, you guys suck. You guys are fake. You guys, it's all the promotion. You're not real. You don't deserve your talent. What?
On that note, because we were having this conversation before you arrived, I think it's horrible that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame still hasn't acknowledged them. If they want to keep out the Archies, fine. But
I'll tell you.
But please, tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong in my perception, right. Because it's almost like they are deliberately keeping them out, as if they did something. They're not like the Pete Rose. Sorry, Donna, she's from Cincinnati. Of rock and roll.
Well, it's been nice talking to you.
They are. People are still, for whatever criteria. It's not like you keep a rock and roller out of the Hall of Fame for bad behavior.
No, here's the story on that. This is a great one. They absolutely deserve to go in.
So does Spinal Tap, I guess, from you. Yeah.
Well, a lot of groups do. A certain former editor of Rolling Stone, who I will not dignify by name, who is in charge of that now, doesn't like pop music or 60s pop hit bands. They're not real. They're not the Laurel Canyon hippies of the 70s or so forth. They're not Neil Young or all that. So, unfortunately, unless a group was a Beach Boys or a Lovin' Spoonful or a Young Rascals who had someone behind them, or Tom Hanks got the Dave Clark Five in, or that kind of thing, the Monkees aren't going to get in. Now, in early 2000, and hopefully we can talk a little bit more about this.
This is the Chuck Harter Show. We'll talk about whatever.
All right, well, okay, that's fine. But anyway, I spent a week with Jones at his farm in Beaverton, Pennsylvania, and I can probably repeat about a third of what happened. But off mic later, I'll tell you the better stuff. But one of the best things that happened was when they toured England in '97, the four of them, they did 12 shows. Davey arranged for a guy to go over and videotape 7 of the shows. Mm-hmm. And so I guess he'd sent the tapes to Jones, but he never watched them. So I was there, and I had the best show of the 7 with me. So one night we were sitting there, and I said, I want to put something on. And the night before, we'd hit it pretty hard, so we were rather mellow that night. So he had a big screen TV and speakers, and so I put it on, and we sat there hoisting and rolling, watching it, and as it went on, he was just, man, we're a real band, man. No, listen to this, listen to this. And so he stops the tape a couple. He says, stop the tape, man. Stop the tape, man. Yeah, all right. And I go, what? He goes, where's my phone book, man? And he gets the phone book, and Dolan. Hey, Mickey, man. And none of the other 3 were home, but he left messages. Mickey, man, I'm watching this in 97. We're a real band, man. To hell with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We should be in there. I want to put this on a film and show it in front, man. We're great. Call me back, man. Right? And a little later, Peter, man, I just saw you. Oh, my God, we were incredible. Mike, oh, my God, you actually were alive at that show. You woke up for that one. Oh, my God, you've got to call me back. Oh, my God, it's amazing. Okay, go run it some more. Mm-hmm. So there you have it. But it was great to watch him watch the Monkees.
Wow.
Right? Mm-hmm. And he went crazy, and I was so happy I was able to do that, man. Isn't that something?
That is something.
Chuck Harter is with us. Chuck Harter, Monkees historian, writer of the Disney Channel documentary, Hey, We're the Monkees. Chuck Harter, human sound effects machine. Let's not forget.
That's right, man.
Can you use Sammy saying man, too? Or?
Yeah, well, man.
Yes, okay. Just one of the...
Who can make a sunrise? Perhaps next time.
Chuck's other books, contributions to pop culture include Mr.Novak, an acclaimed television series, which is available in hardcover, paperback, and for the Kindle at Amazon, BearManorMedia.com, wherever books are sold online. The website is Mr. Novak.
Sorry, man. MrNovak.com. Sorry, I was in Monkeyland. Now I'm in high school. Let me get back to Monkeyland.
We're talking about the height of craziness, 67 going into 68 after the first season, after the tour, where they went all over the place to Japan and Australia. And then when they came back to do the second season, I was talking to my brother about this the other night. Mm. And he made a very good point. He said, one thing they did that the Beatles did not do and is the fact that they did what they did doing episodic television, which is a totally different art form.
That's right.
If you can call it an art form.
Yeah.
The fact it was, there was 5 or 6 days to shoot one show. And so they would go from, and considering how many setups they did, because it was such a visual show, and they would have probably 10 times more cuts.
That's right.
Than the typical network sitcom.
I think they were closer, might be to like Laugh-In. For the type of cuts, as opposed to.
That's a very good comparison.
Let's say like the Munsters.
Yeah. So they were doing that at a time when you were shooting 30 shows a year, and so to do that and to keep up the pace that they did, I mean, the Beatles could not say that.
Well, no, and the Monkees, Jones told me this too. He said just for the longest time it was 6 a.m. till 6, filming 5-6 days a week, record at night on the weeknights, gig on the weekend. So I said, did you ever have a day off? He said, occasionally. What did you do? I slept. And that's what happens to pop phenomena.
I can believe it.
And the Spice Girls were massive for their 2 years. They said that if we had a day off in 2 months, we just slept through exhaustion. Because you got to go constantly. Yeah. Plus your pop band, photos, interviews, pictures. it just never stops. And the Beatles, and the other comparison that's interesting is in those days, the Beatles would do half hour, 25 minutes. The Monkees, when they toured in 67, did a full hour show. They had movies behind them, which was innovative, lighting effects, costume changes. They came out and did solo spots. They put on a full hour show where any of the other rock bands of the day, Rolling Stones or whoever, just burped them out in 30 minutes and ran. So they were innovative in that respect, which means, are they a real band? Well, yes, they are. Okay, so that's always been the case. So I think one of the best things in the 80s when all of the resurgence came in and the records reissued and this and that, they do play. They did play. And it's now, I think, there's probably still some people, they didn't play their own instruments or whatever it is. But that is so much less than it was in the past.
Oh, yeah.
That they've gotten their due.
Well, you think the concerts help that so the
Absolutely.
audience seated there can actually see them play?
Right, and they've been touring forever, 80s, 90s, and now.
And remember what we bring up continually on this show, and they were touring, there was no internet.
That's right.
No monitors either.
No monitors.
So they had to walk out into 10,000 screaming girls, which is the equivalent is standing next to a jet engine going off. So you can't hear anything.
Yeah.
You just have to kind of watch each other.
Chuck interviewed all four of the Monkees for the Disney Channel documentary, and one of the things that Mickey told you, speaking about that craziness when they're doing the live shows, is in some places it was so loud you couldn't hear anything, so he would watch Mike's feet.
Right.
Basically, Mike's foot was
to keep time.
To keep time.
Right.
Wow. And there was one episode of the show was a concert show.
Yeah.
Which is really cool when you look back at it now.
Yeah, and they do grunge, garage rock versions of their hits because, and at least up till then, it was all top session guys. There were 3 or 4 guitar tracks and piano and they've got a guitar, bass, and drum and a guy hitting a tambourine. So they did scaled down grunge versions of what they did. And that's why in 97, when they played England, the first half of the show was the 4 of them. Mm-hmm. The second half of the show was half backing musicians and them doing the later material. It was wonderful. And it was just astounding.
Chuck Harter is with us, along with Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen, as we devote this hour to the history of the Monkees and their impact on music and television. We'll take a quick time out, then we'll continue our conversation with Chuck here on TV Confidential.
Cam Caricatures will keep the fun rolling at your next party, convention, or event through a live video feed. As friends or colleagues gather around the webcam, I can see them on my screen, and they can view my caricatures come to life on their own screen. The completed black and white drawing will then be emailed to you to print out. Pricing and details are at hamcamcaricatures.com. That's HAMMCAMCARICATURES.com.
Buying or selling a home can be one of the most stressful things we'll ever do in life. But it doesn't have to be. And no one knows better than our friends at Front Porch Realty Group. They're a community of realtors serving the Northern Bay Area of California that cares about their clients as individuals first and foremost. Whether you're a first-time buyer or looking to lease or sell your property in the Bay Area, Front Porch Realty Group will help you through this important transition by providing you with the right information for your situation while lessening the pain. They also work with a network of realtors throughout California who provide the same high caliber of customer service. Call Front Porch Realty Group at 415-886-7411 for a realtor referral near you. You can also visit their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on the services they provide, including upcoming workshops and seminars. For more information, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com. Front Porch Realty Group. They'll find the solution that works best for you.
Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with the ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TV Confidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential, get.uber.com/go/TV www.uber.com/go/TV Confidential. If you've listened to TV Confidential and like what you've heard, please consider supporting our efforts by becoming a patron of our show through Patreon. It's easy to do and costs as little as $1 a month. For more information, go to patreon.com/TV Confidential or click the Patreon button on the homepage at tvconfidential.net.
Hi, this is Julie Newmar, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Roberts with a reminder that Marion Ross will join us at the top of the hour. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen are with us, along with her guest, Chuck Harter, as we continue our look at the history of the Monkees and their impact on the worlds of music and television. Chuck wrote Hey, Hey, We're the Monkees, the acclaimed documentary that originally aired on the Disney Channel. Chuck, before we went to break, we were talking about the controversy surrounding the first two Monkees albums at the time of their original release. You bring up the sessions musicians, and that kind of circles back to what we said about the whole controversy. They didn't play their instruments originally. I didn't know this until I watched your documentary, Chuck, is that everybody, pretty much every recording artist, especially every group, they had studio musicians to do that, and those are very practical, because what they really need is, because of their various commitments, and what they need is for them to be there to record and to lay the tracks, and so that way they didn't have to worry about getting the guitar playing, stuff like that, because they had studio musicians for that. For some reason, when it was revealed that the Monkees had studio musicians, it was more of a controversy than it probably would have been today.
Yeah, I think so. And Davey made a bad analogy in the documentary. He says the Mamas and Papas didn't play their own instruments, but the Mamas and Papas was one guitar player.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The group who he should have said was the Beach Boys, because the Beach Boys could play. They did gigs and played, but Brian Wilson used the Wrecking Crew here, which was Hal Blaine and Glenn Campbell and all those guys, because they could get it quicker, studio time. The guys are coming off the road exhausted. It's better just to have the tracks done. Yep. And at the beginning, there simply wasn't time for them to do the tracks, even if they had wanted to.
Yeah.
There's just no time. You're filming and publicity and all this stuff.
But just the post-production when you're recording a song, the vocals are a different track than...
Right.
And each instrument is its own track.
Right.
And so you're not going to be doing... It's not like you're at a piano bar and there's one microphone that's over you and the instrument and you're recording it. No, it's very well produced. So that's just the nuts and bolts of the industry.
And I'm thinking all out here, which is a dangerous thing, so just hang with me on this one. But I think part of the uproar probably speaks to the naivety of the general public.
Yes.
Because
their image is them in the red shirts at their instruments, and they're assuming that they're just doing that. And even sometimes in movies and TV shows, when you show a band recording, you're showing the band and the instruments in the recording booth with mics over their head.
Yeah. And so because we didn't have an internet,
yeah,
and we didn't have the access to the information, we didn't have all the extra features that we take for granted when we buy a CD or a DVD or whatnot. That gives us a glimpse of inside the studio. So that's why if the Monkees came to be today, it would be that would be less of an issue than it was in 1967.
I also don't think the general public, if you're like Daydream Believer or some of these songs, you associate each member with an instrument. Mike playing guitar, Peter usually playing bass.
Or harpsichord.
Yeah, or harps. And Mickey on the drums, and usually Davey with a tambourine or maracas. But you're listening to these songs, you're hearing violins, you're hearing Daydream Believer.
No, they were extra.
How many strings are in the background there?
No, there's like 5 guitar
but you're not making that connection, I think, as a viewer either. There's a lot more instruments playing than what meets the eye.
Yeah.
There's a Hollywood perception of what a band is like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, it's funny in the day, because I read a lot of the music magazines of that time, the real rock bands in L.A. didn't put down the Monkees because they knew what it was. Mm-hmm. They understood the Buffalo Springfield or the Byrds or Love or that kind of... Frank Zappa even said the Monkees have better produced records than the San Francisco groups, which caught him a ton of flack.
Frank Zappa appeared on the show.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But that's the point. The people who really criticized him were the bands that weren't making it. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, they're just this is the publicity machine. They suck, or this or that. Or one of them was Sideburns, who I shan't name, did some interviews in some rather big publications. Well, we're phony. We don't play. They should know this, which I'm sure endeared him to the producers, among other things. But that's what it was. The people who really knew understood. The Beatles knew what they were. They didn't put them down, as Davey does his bad John Lennon accent.
Well, you know, he said, you know, man, it's that John Lennon said, you like the Marx Brothers.
You know, and they were. And the Marx Brothers were comic actors who played instruments.
They were
and musical
all
performers.
The Marx Brothers were proficient in it.
Absolutely.
Mainly Harpo and Chico.
But they all
even
could play.
Groucho was.
They all could play. So that's the key, really. So, and then that led to them doing Headquarters, where they did, for the most part, play all their instruments, and Don Kirshner being fired and all this kind of thing. And that was both ultimately a good and a bad thing.
Yeah, 'cause it goes back to, the point you made earlier about the lack of central strong management guiding them once they
were in over their head.
As it was either Peter or Davey who admitted on the documentary that they were in it. That it's like, be careful what you wish for.
Right. Peter said we weren't ready, and in those days you couldn't punch in like you can now. So Davey would have to play 24 times on the tambourine till his hand bled, because you had a limited number of tracks. And it was hard work. Plus they're filming. Plus they're exhausted. Plus they're taking pills to keep going. Plus the insanity. So they did that one album and said, no, that's it. Let's just do half and half, which they did for Pisces, Aquarius, and Jones Limited, which I think is their best album, the follow one. So that was the case, really. It was just too much. God, the schedule's insane. I mean, nowadays, a pop group puts out one album a year. In those days, it was 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And singles, and tour, and do publicity, and do all this stuff. You got the internet now. You can go, blah, 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 and it goes out there. But then you had to go do it. And that's what almost killed them. But they survived, and God bless them.
And they still, despite the schedule of the first season, when they came in and were playing their own instruments, that increased the workload. It's
absolutely.
It's a wonder they made it through. It was a wonder they made it through it all.
And there were fist fights, and there were nervous breakdowns, and there were things I can't talk about on the radio, but they came through it. Because it was crazy. And again, no central manager. They didn't have a Brian Epstein or a Peter Grant for Led Zeppelin or an Andrew Loog Oldham for the Stones. They didn't have one father figure, which bands need, that they could complain to him and he would take the brunt and deal with it.
Which I think what's also maybe funny or ironic, or in the pilot episode there was an adult.
Yeah.
Right.
But something, and I've heard Peter bring up in several interviews, the fact that these were young people that were on their own and long hairs, and they didn't have like a dad to straighten them out or anything like that in the context of the show.
What was the name of the dummy?
Yeah, they had the dummy.
The dummy was the dad.
Yeah. Which I think makes probably a bolder statement than we appreciate.
No,
I'm being facetious when I say
but
that.
I think we've all had that authority figure once. That was that dummy.
Yeah.
But Peter had talked about how the kids could be in charge. That they were in charge, and that was very important because you did not see that on TV, on American television anyway. That there wasn't, even if the Bradys had 2 parents, the Partridge Family had. There was always an adult to kind of set the tone, and the Monkees did not have and that made it work, because in the pilot they did have a manager that was kind of guiding them, and the pilot was bad, but in the rest of the show that they did not have that adult supervision.
It was bad until it was cut together, until it was re-edited. And
but in the storyline of the show, the fictional world of these 4 guys, not having the adult supervision was what made the show successful.
Well,
but behind the scenes, not having the adult supervision was
a real
the
rough
hard part.
time. But yeah, that's true. And Mickey said the show almost didn't make the air because their hair isn't long, but it was. There hadn't been a TV show with long hairs, and long hairs were considered bad people or long-haired kids or hot-smoking bohemians or whatever it was. And they were these fun, happy guys. And so that was innovative, where kids could see the show and go, well, they're okay. Wait a minute. And that was even better when they didn't have the father figure.
What was the target demographic of the show originally?
It it was on at night at 7:30 at night,
Yeah.
so I think it was adults. I mean, many people, Ed probably and others, who came into them in 70, 71 when it was a Saturday morning rerun.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
geared for kids.
Definitely.
That's for children. But the original show, I think, was adults and teenagers.
My sister, who's I have
Family
an older
Hour.
sister who's 10 years older than I am. She was like the perfect demographic when the show first came out at that time, and she had the albums and all this stuff. She totally loved it. I think when they started syndicating it in the 70s, it's when I really started studying it.
Yeah.
But again, it was like for someone at my age, it was like to see the idea of breaking the fourth wall and seeing the idea, especially that one episode where Mickey just starts walking through the set.
Remarkable.
To a kid,
We need a brilliant idea.
Yes, we need a brilliant idea. And yeah, it did give you appreciation because, maybe Saturday morning you're watching Abbott and Costello or the Marx Brothers and you're making the connection. Oh, yeah, they're doing that.
No,
You were.
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was a weird kid. I knew that
still a
Curly
weird
wasn't really...
Still a weird
still
kid,
are.
man.
I was a kid
This
who
guy's
couldn't
talking about the
understand-
Monkees, man.
I couldn't understand why that boy in Cleveland was in the hospital because he was doing what the Three Stooges were doing, and I'm the one saying, there's a sound effects guy making that noise. Curly's hit with a rubber hammer. What's wrong with And I'm
He's
not.
an idiot.
Yeah, and I didn't
Excuse me, mentally challenged. I forgot what year this is.
Yeah, me and the Hollywood kids I grew up, we kind of knew that stuff, and we didn't understand why kids across the country apparently did not know what we knew about how
But that's the
production
thing,
worked.
and that's why, the machine made it work, absolutely. But you know what? Those four guys were all really good. And here's something I'd like to throw in briefly. All four of them had done stuff prior to the Monkees, because some of the early criticism was, you could have taken any four bozos and threw them in. No, Jones had been a Broadway star in Oliver, and he'd done television acting. Mickey had
He was Circus Boy.
Circus Boy,
and he had played in local bands. Nesmith had hosted Hoot Nights at the Troubadour and recorded some singles. Peter had been a folk musician in Greenwich Village playing.
And who was he playing with? He was...
well, he knew Stephen Stills and played a little with him, but they all had performed. It wasn't like they just took four guys from Central Casting and said, go.
Yeah.
Now, they were cast to match the Beatles in the sense that Davey is Paul McCartney. He's the heartthrob. Mickey is sort of the loudmouth, guy, Lennon. Nesmith is the quiet one, Harrison, and Peter is Ringo, the sidekick. Mm-hmm. So they did kind of cast a little bit in the Hard Day's Night characters of the Beatles. But, and it's funny, too, the three of them play themselves. Torque was not Peter.
Yeah.
And later it bothered him because even later years, I'd see people, older fans, relate to him as the Peter character, and he's not that, and sometimes it got a little touchy.
I see him in interviews now, and he's always the most philosophical one.
He
the
is.
most
He's got the best memory, which is surprising considering that.
And I guess people couldn't understand that. He was in many ways
he's
the
acting.
character was the dumb one. And
but it's.
But he was also very innocent and naive.
Yes.
Yeah, which brings up another point. Is
it's
that
Ringo.
In a lot of ways, the character he played sort of spoke to the heart of the show, and that his character made possible a lot of the great moments.
Absolutely.
Of the sweetness of the show, and later on, the Devil and Mr. Torque, and there's one other show where Peter was sort of the central.
Yeah, there was one where he fell in love with a girl in a painting.
Yes,
and
with
I mean, it only would have worked with that character.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked with any of the other three.
Yeah. So his contributions as the sidekick, the simple one, are underrated.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they all were good.
Chuck Harter is good. Chuck wrote the acclaimed documentary, Hey, Hey, We're the Monkees, for which he interviewed not only Davy Jones, Mickey Dolenz, Peter Tork, and Mike Nesmith, but just about everyone else who had anything to do with the Monkees phenomenon. We'll continue our conversation with Chuck at the end of our second hour. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we'll take a quick time out, then Marion Ross will join us when we come back for hour number 2 of TV Confidential. Stay with us.
If you haven't been listening to TV Confidential,
This is who you're missing.
Shirley Jones,
Diane Baker,
Bobby Hall,
Channing Chase,
Charlene Tilton,
Cherie J. Wilson,
David Franco, Peggy King,
Shelley Morrison,
Karen Kardashian, Joanne Worley,
And many, many more of your favorite celebrities and people behind the scenes in the world of television. That's TV Confidential. Every week on this station and every day online at tvconfidential.net.
One more item. Our friend Chuck Harter, author of Mr. Novak, an acclaimed television series, is asking for your help on his latest project. Chuck is teaming up with Martin Grahams Jr., another first-class writer, on a book about the vintage horror TV series Way Out. Way Out, you might recall, was a half-hour anthology series hosted by Roald Dahl that aired for 14 weeks on the CBS network during the summer of 1961. Taped in New York City and produced by David Susskind for Talent Associates, Way Out aired on Friday nights just before the Twilight Zone in the summer of 61. If you remember Way Out, Chuck and Martin would love to hear from you. It is their intention to interview people about their memories of viewing the show as part of their upcoming book. You can email Chuck at chuck.harter@earthlink.net, and Harter is spelled Harter, chuck.harter@earthlink.net. If you remember watching Way Out and would like your memories included as part of this upcoming book. If you happen to have any photographs from Way Out or know someone who does, Chuck and Martin would like to hear from you too. For more information, email Chuck at chuck.harter@earthlink.net.
Accredited by Guinness World Records, welcome to Archival Television Audio Incorporated, a peerless TV soundtrack archive, preserving the audio from television's first 3 decades, the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the golden and silver age of television.
For more information, go to atvaudio.com. Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with a ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TV Confidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential, get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty Group, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Hi, this is Jacqueline Smith. You're listening to TV Confidential.
I'm gonna tell you how it's gonna be. You're gonna give your love to me. I'm gonna love you both night and day.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that the next edition of TV Confidential will premiere next week on this station at the usual time. Our guests will include Judy Norton, Mary Ellen Walton from the Waltons. We hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen are with us along with their guest this hour, Chuck Harter. Chuck wrote Hey, Hey, We're the Monkees, an acclaimed documentary that originally aired on the Disney Channel, for which Chuck interviewed Mike Nesmith, Peter Tork, Davy Jones, and Mickey Dolenz, as well as other key people behind the scenes of the Monkees phenomenon. Chuck is also the author of Mr. Novak, an acclaimed television series. Chuck's website is mrnovakbook.com. Chuck?
Here's another thing I'd like to bring up. It's a shame that in all of the comebacks, the 70s with Dolenz, Jones, Boyce, and Hart, the 80s with the big MTV comeback, the 90s with the tour, Justice with Nesmith, they didn't do any comic acting. They did records, they toured.
The one TV special.
They did videos, they did one special.
That's a topic down the road.
Yeah, and that's funny, but the drag is they were not the great Marx Brother comic actors they did in a vehicle.
Yeah.
There was plans for a film, it fell apart several times.
They didn't do any of the romps that they did so well.
They just didn't. In the 90s, when they're doing interviews with each other, there are moments where you see it. They're all working well, and I have a great memory. In '96, they were doing publicity photos over in Burbank, and I was there with Henry Diltz, the photographer. And they were getting along pretty good. Nesmith was actually joking with them, and he said, "I'll wear the green hat." And I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me, because I'd have said, "No, wear the." But anyway, they were in the hallway, and Diltz is filming them, and it's me for about 15 minutes, and they were the Monkees. They were joking, getting along. I sent him a picture where you can see them all laughing, and I thought, that's what needs to get out there. Yes, the records are cool. And that's a shame, because they were so good acting with each other.
I remember in the 80s, they were playing for the MTV softball team.
Right.
And at this time, because we talked about this earlier, Happy Days had the most famous of these. But all the TV shows had Letterman had one, Entertainment Tonight had one, but MTV had, and the Monkees were part of the actual team. And I would see interviews. They would never show the entire game, but they would show highlights from the game, and then team interviews. And you would see Mickey was the Mickey that you knew.
Yeah.
When he would be interviewed for that, he was the Mickey that you knew. He would be hamming it up and doing a bad Edward G. Robinson impression, something like that. Very bad. But I would see them. Let's say they all appeared on The View,
right?
And they would have a serious moment talking about whatever, and then the shtick would start to pop out,
right?
Because Mike was never with them.
No.
And then Joy Behar would say, but. Mike Nesmith's not touring with you, and the three of them in sync would just go, "He's gone!" It was just the perfect shtick that
absolutely.
They would do. And it's absolutely. Not just the delivery of the line, the physical movement, looking right to the camera.
There's a chemistry.
Yeah,
there's a chemistry.
That never left them,
and that's a shame. Like I said, if there had been a 1987 Monkees 1 hour special or film when that great big comeback was coming back, and Rhino was putting out, Heart and Soul, or That Was Then, This Is Now, or so forth. Boom! It didn't happen for various reasons. It's a shame.
Before we went out there, we were talking about the time when three of them were on Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
Which, going back, just talking about generation, because I have a sister that's 10 years older and a brother who's slightly younger than she is, and then I have younger siblings. The younger siblings had no idea why the older siblings were going nuts when the show was on the air. Because it just happened to be, it was what was playing on TV. Mm-hmm. And we see it's three different storylines playing out, and each one of them are in a separate storyline. They don't come together until the end of the episode. And it was kind of a build-up, because Davy Jones played a friend of the parents from England, from the 60s. And he comes in, and we're going, oh, cool, it's Davy Jones. Oh, great. Yeah. And then we see Topanga's father, who's introduced, and then we know it's Peter Tork. And of course, my younger sisters have no idea why we find this so amazingly cool. And then, and then Mickey Dolenz is there. And all of a sudden, it's I think it's the parents' anniversary or something like that, and the band doesn't show up. And the three of them just kind of
will play,
and they get up and they do. I forgot what song, but it's not one that we always associate.
No, that they did a tune.
They did a tune, and then you think this, for the older siblings, this was the coolest thing in the world to see these three reunited. The younger siblings having no idea and I'm trying to explain in the commercial breaks who these guys are, and then. When you think, oh, this was a great moment, Dave Madden's in the audience of this anniversary
Here comes
party.
That damn Partridge Family.
But it was kind of like, him kind of getting a note of approval, and then the epilogue during the closing credits, he comes up and he says, I used to manage a band. I still have the tour bus. You guys could be as big as the Beatles. And then the three in unison, in their traditional shtick, just look at each other and then, nah. So they basically close out the episode. And so for, our generation, this is a great nostalgic moment that a younger generation will never get.
Well, here's something about the younger generation. I agree with what you say, but here's a weird, freaky thing that happened when they came back in 86 and 7 and did the 300 tours or whatever it was. I would be at a newsstand and I would see Tiger Beat and 16, the current teen mags. And I don't remember who was big in the mid-90s. Maybe it was New Kids on the Block or whoever the latest big teen idols were. And I would see on the same cover New Kid, My Secret Loves, Davy Jones, What I Look For in a Girl, Teeny Bopper Star, I Love This, and Mickey Dolenz. And I went, what? So I get the magazines, and I'm looking through them, and they're in it as much as the current teeny bop little bands, and they're in their 40s. And I'm looking at that, and I'm going, what? And they were featured in the teen mags 86, 7, and 8 as much as the latest thing. Yeah. Well, and when you went to the concerts, it's mom and daughter both screaming over Davy because even though he's 40 with a very bad, mullet haircut, they're going oh my God, hey man, I like the girls, man, and they're all going crazy.
But when they were part of MTV, they were just as big as the VJs.
Absolutely.
At the time, and they were and I remember the Christmas song that they did. They had a Christmas video that was the Monkees and the VJs. And
who shows up at the end of Santa Claus?
It's Michael Nesmith.
The old man.
Yeah, Santa Claus takes off the beard, and you see that it's Michael Nesmith.
Right.
I was just remembering the scene in the original Brady Bunch movie with Davy Jones, and who is rushing the stage. It's all the adults, and the kids are...
Erin Gray shaking her thing.
Yeah, right.
But and then later in the movie, when it's like the talent show, and the Brady kids are doing this retro 70s, basically what the original cast did in the series, and then they win the contest, and then you see who the judges are, and it's Davy Jones, Peter Tork, and Mickey Dolenz.
There you go.
But it's, again, you and I are in the movie theater. We are with friends our own age, laughing ourselves,
and they don't get it. They didn't get it.
And the rest of the audience is clueless. Yeah, we are in pain laughing.
Right.
And
that's true. It was generational, but it was still weird to see. And they had hardly any pictures of them of the 60s in the mid-80s teen mags. It's all current shots with those horrible clothes that sponsored the first tour. I can't remember what they... Horrible. But it was weird. It was like, it's perception. Yeah. Because even the young girls did not see... They all still look great, but they didn't see a 40-year-old man because they would see on MTV... him at 21 and 22, gorgeous. And when they saw the 40-year-old man, they didn't see the 40-year-old man. They saw the teeny bopper. Or the young Davy. Yeah. And that's something about perception of
and the fact that Davy basically kept himself in good shape all his life.
Yeah, he did.
That didn't hurt either.
Yeah, he was a vegetarian. And... he had the healthiest habits of the four of them.
Which is why it was a shame when
I think is what kind of blew them all away, shocked them.
Mickey told me he thought he would have been first to go.
Yeah, he was a vegetarian.
Have any questions, Ed? We seem to be just blabbing.
No. Chuck Harter is with us. Chuck interviewed Mickey Dolenz, Davy Jones, Peter Tork, Mike Nesmith, and other key people behind the Monkees phenomenon for the excellent documentary Hey, Hey, We're the Monkees, which originally aired on the Disney Channel. We mentioned at the top of the program, Chuck is also an accomplished musician. He brought his guitar with us. And at some point in our conversation, Chuck is going to perform a few tunes.
I'll do a couple of monkey songs. Man.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, in that case, I'm going to do a monkey song now. Well, I'll do one if I can remember everything. But a great thing about the first Monkees album, even though it was the session musicians, was they had a songwriting team of Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, who were sort of staff writers, much like the older Harold Arlen and those guys, from the 40s, who were on staff writers. So they had really good songwriters, and this is a really good one from the first album.
I wanna be free, like the bluebirds flying by me, like the waves out on the blue sea. If your love has to tie me, don't try me, say goodbye. I wanna be free. Don't say you love me, say you like me, but when I need you beside me, stay close enough to guide me, confide in me, whoa, whoa. I wanna hold your hand, walk along the sand, laughing in the sun, always having fun, doing all those things without any strings to tie me down. I wanna be free, like the warm September wind, babe. Say you'll always be my friend, babe. We can make it to the end, babe. Again, babe, I have to say, I wanna hold your hand, walk along the sand, laughing in the sun, always having fun, doing all those things without any strings to tie me down. I wanna be free. I wanna be free. I wanna be free. I wanna be free.
That's for David Thomas Jones, wherever you are, bud.
Chuck Harter will be back with us next week for part 2 of our look at the history of the Monkees and their impact on the worlds of music and television. We'll talk some more about Boyce and Hart, the Monkees World Tour of 1967, and how the dynamics of the Monkees TV series changed when the show returned for its second season. We'll also talk about how the Monkees' 1968 feature motion picture Head was ahead of its time, and how their ill-fated NBC special 33 1/3 Revolutions per Monkey led to the demise of the group. Chuck will also play a few more tunes for us. All that coming up next week on TV Confidential. In the meantime, a reminder that My Days, Happy and Otherwise by Marion Ross is available in bookstores everywhere through Kensington Books. You can also find it at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and wherever books are sold online. That'll do it for our program tonight, folks. Ed Robertson, on behalf of Tony Figueroa, Donna Allen, Phil Grace, and Greg Ehrbar, thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you next time on TV Confidential.